What's going on, guys? So today we're going to be reviewing 3 different NPASs, seeing how they perform in the MWS and figure out which one would make sense to install in your gun. And if these reviews are helpful for you guys, consider giving the video a like, hitting that subscribe button. Try not to shill the channel too much, but every little bit does help. Alright, so let's just get right into it. I've already done the testing, so we'll have some B-roll rolling while we're talking about this, but first up on the list is going to be the Revanchist NPAS. According to my notes, we're getting about 399 FPS with a 0.20 gram BB at about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And it dropped down a fair bit actually when we hit about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, on a fresh magazine, warmed up to room temperature, we were seeing about 385 FPS, right in that range. And that's basically the max FPS that you can get out of the NPAS for Revanchist. Taking a look now, as we cranked in the NPAS and tried to turn the FPS down, we were seeing extreme spreads. I'll pull up a image right here of about 29 FPS. For me, that's, consistency is accuracy, and that extreme spread is unacceptable in terms of accuracy. We're looking more within that 10 to 15 range is basically acceptable accuracy. So, right away, that was a no-go. Another thing that we noticed as it was cranking down the FPS is that if you rotate the NPAS about like 20, 30 degrees, and you block off that area, again, I'll pull up some B-roll here, and what happened was able to get repeatable results of a extreme spread, again, of 29 FPS. So as the gun is going through the firing cycles and that piece of metal is rotating inside the nozzle, you will see that fluctuation. It may be okay for a couple of shots, and then something happens around, it gets jostled around. So just keep that in mind if you are looking to turn down the FPS to about that 350 mark. Wouldn't really recommend Revanchist for that purpose. Other notes that I want to mention here is that a lot of people have mentioned that the Revanchist does find itself backing out and reducing FPS or increasing FPS. I'm not exactly sure what way that's gone. I haven't done a lot of extensive testing, just some testing within a controlled environment. But it does look like they, that might have been the older versions of the Revanchist NPAS, because it does look like there are 2 O-rings on the threads where it helps it stay in place. And hey, if that's still happening to you guys, a little bit of blue Loctite, let it dry, install it in the gun. It should be fine. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, but it is something to think about if you pick up this NPAS. Next up, I have the Orga NPAS. Right around 75 degrees Fahrenheit, we were getting 370 feet per second with a 0.2 gram BB with an extreme spread similar to the Revanchist with about 15 FPS variance from highs to lows. Again, with the Orga, and you're gonna start seeing me mention this a lot as we're going through the different NPASs, it's going to have the same issues as the Revanchist when you're getting around that 350 mark. Again, similar issues where you rotate it, you can block off that float valve area or the router area just a little bit, and you can see extreme spreads of, again, 30 FPS, give or take. So all in all, the Orga and the Revanchist honestly have very, very similar builds, and so you can basically see why they would have similar issues. Taking a deeper dive now and looking at joule creep between the Revanchist and the Orga, we're seeing similar joule creep of about 0.2 joules for every 1/10 of a gram added to the BB weight. And that's something that you can expect for pretty much all of the valves that I've tested. So, keep that in mind while you're looking at FPS and adding FPS. You want to keep in mind your joules as well as you increase that BB weight. And last but not least, I have a video out on the Revanchist NPAS already, going into that in deep dive and more of a candid approach to testing that NPAS. What we saw was right around 330 to 350 FPS at 70 degrees Fahrenheit. again on a fresh magazine. However, the extreme spread was sitting like at that FPS level. We were sitting at about 30 feet per second extreme spread. So just summarizing the results there, but again, you're gonna see kind of similar issues. So I want to cut to another section here and just take a look, a deeper dive, and take a look at some of the measurements on the NPASs. All right, so let's take some measurements, and I've got all of these NPASs side by side here, so we'll take a look. First up is the Revanchist NPAS. And one of the reasons I think that it had the lowest FPS of the bunch is if you can see here, you can see that little nub on the back of the NPAS. And what that does is it ends up pushing the NPAS further forward, thus closing off more air. And so I think this is why this is getting the lowest FPS of the bunch. You can even see a gap. If we could take up that area, shave down a little bit of this, I'm pretty sure this would have, you know, pretty decent results and get higher FPS. But just as it stands from the factory, poor quality control or just the lack of oversight and finishing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my calipers here. We'll zero this out, and we're just gonna measure from that piece to the opening. You know, we're sitting at roughly 1.6 inches, and that's honestly being generous. We're giving it the benefit of the doubt because I wasn't able to measure that nib. We'll take a quick measurement actually here. We'll see if we can get that. Yeah, so we'll probably add 0.06 to the overall length here. So yeah, about 0.166 is the total length from the back of this nub to the opening. Let's take some measurements. I've got the Orga here in front of me. And so similar measurement, right? And right here, we're sitting at 0.121. And then we got the RA Tech here, 0.109. I'll link another video where some guy goes in and is modifying the plastic piece here. By shaving down this piece, you can, again, bring the float valve kind of further back. And so as you can see, this is how it would sit inside of your nozzle. You're really kind of sitting on those two notches there. So actually the little nib in the middle there, not a huge factor, but it is still resting on that raised section. So maybe if you cut out this middle piece a little bit more so it could sit flush like that on the wider section, you could get a little bit more FPS. But I'll throw another video up where a guy goes in, cuts back some of this on the backside here. That way you can get the float valve a little bit further back, and that will increase your FPS. But look, if you're looking for something straight out of the factory, I think this is showing why the Revanchist was getting about 350. The Orga was hitting around like 360, 370 range, and the RA Tech was hitting right about 400 at 80 degrees F. So when we bring that down to about 70, 75, we're hitting about 380, 385, fully closed. So that's kind of what you can expect from these different valves, but just wanted to show some measurements. So let's talk about the final results. So overall, you can see that the NPASs have similar issues across the board, and it's really based on the construction of the NPAS and the way that they reduce FPS or increase FPS, right? And it's that rotation of the NPAS that's causing a lot of issues. One NPAS that does address this would be the G&P NPAS. I haven't had a chance to actually get hands-on with one, but it mimics the stock Tokyo Marui design, and so it won't allow the NPAS to rotate during cycling, which provides pretty consistent results. Just keep that in mind. You can roll the dice on some G&Ps if you can get a hold of them. It's been pretty hard to find them in stock. So after all this testing, what am I going to install into my gun? I'm gonna be sticking with the RA Tech NPAS. Reason being, I have two different bolts. One bolt will remain stock with the stock rocket valve, float valve, whatever you wanna call it. And then the other bolt is going to have the RA Tech in it. And the reason I'm doing that is because I can get 380 to 390 FPS with acceptable consistency, right around that 10 to 15 FPS range. And so I can just switch the bolt out to be within field compliance. It also comes with a tool that's pretty handy, so if I ever need to adjust it, it's all just kind of included in a package. I don't have to buy additional tools to get this thing to work. But I do want to preface this and say, hey, what am I not doing with the RA Tech? The RA Tech is not a one-stop shop solution, and I wouldn't recommend it as such. I would not recommend replacing your stock bolt with an RA Tech if you intend to be jumping between FPS limits of 350 to 390. If you play at a field that's mostly, 400 FPS limits, absolutely the RA Tech is a great option, and you never, dip into that 350 realm. Go ahead and throw it in the gun. However, if you find yourselves having to jump between FPS, I really wouldn't recommend it for 350 FPS, just because the consistency is just unacceptable at range. So overall, what are my recommendations? If you have a stock bolt, go ahead and keep it that way. If you find yourself switching between FPSs, go ahead and keep the stock bolt as is. However, if you do want 400 to 370 FPS, RA Tech is a pretty good option. Orga works as well, but you won't get that high end. You can also try out the G&P. Again, I've heard some pretty good things about that, so you have to do some research, roll the dice on that. However, that's my recommendation if you're looking to change the FPS, but still maintain the Tokimiri accuracy. And then for Revanchist, I probably wouldn't recommend it. Yes, there are some modifications you can do to the nozzle in order to make it work, but from an out-of-the-box standpoint, I couldn't recommend the Revanchist. So I hope this video was helpful to you guys. Again, if you've got anything from the video today, consider giving the video a like or hitting that subscribe button if you haven't already. Really appreciate everybody watching, and until next time, see you guys out there in the field.